It's sort of like nowadays, what I've noticed is the ideas of non-duality are really penetrating the spiritual culture in the West.
They are.
And I'm watching, and I've noticed this for quite some time, that there's, unfortunately, going along with it, in many circles, not all circles fortunately, but in many of them, there's becoming this sort of non-dual fundamentalism.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. So we can interpret the non-dual view, and we start to believe our interpretations, and they fixate, and it becomes the new non-dual theology. And then it's dead. Right? Then it has just died. And that's the danger with anything. You know, you can't, as soon as it fixates, it has died.
What have you noticed are some of the credos or what have you of this non-dual almost culture that's emerging?
Well, let's just start with the obvious one. The one the Buddha came up with, which is a truth, but can also become fixated, that there is no self. Now, of course, when we look inside, there is no separate self. There is no self, really. There's just a vast spaciousness of being, without limit and without boundary. And so, okay, there's no self. That's an interpretation of that experience, right? It's a way of the mind interpreting and trying, which is fine that it does that, and it's trying to communicate its experience. But then the further interpretations get made, and okay, there's no self, therefore there's absolutely no choice, and everything is totally predestined, and
taken to its logical extremes.
Its logical extremes, there's absolutely no doer, All of those, experientially, have a truth to them. There is a place that there is no doer. There is a place of no self. There is a place of you have no free will because there's nobody there to have it. But of course, if there's nobody there to have it, it doesn't make any sense to say you don't got it, right? So there's experiences that cause the mind to make these conclusions. The mind is translating experience into concept. But then as soon as the concept is believed, and the concept becomes the truth, and the experience is no longer the truth, then you come up with some of these that I've just mentioned, and they disable us. They hide from us. Yes, okay, yes, there's no separate self, right? Okay, yes. And what? And what about that body and mind and personality and that humanness? And what about that? And, okay, there is no choice, but what if we remove the concept? There's the experience of no choice, but curiously in the experience itself, there's this combination of no choice and choice. They're both simultaneously present, and we can't actually fixate on one conclusion. And then that's a really interesting space to be in, isn't it? No self accepts the appearance of self. So, to me, that's real non-duality, is two totally opposite and contradictory experiences simultaneously existing.
So, increasingly, you're identifying this level of deeper truth as being somewhat paradoxical.
Totally paradoxical. Yeah, that's what I think of as when we see that the truth can't be contained in either of the paradoxes, in either of the dualistic statements, then there's the third view. Like the Buddha said, the middle way. But to me, the middle way has nothing to do with a middle place between the opposites. It has to do with the greater context in which duality is being experienced. To me, that's the middle way. That which is bigger than and transcendent of, yet within it is expressing itself through and as duality. And that's why we get these sort of paradoxical inner experiences.
Where samsara and nirvana are one.
Where they're exactly the same thing, right? No free will and total free will are actually exactly the same thing.
Exactly.
Self and no self are exactly the same thing on the deepest level. Yeah. But it's very subtle.
Yeah, where
realization.
It is, where the absolute is being interpenetrated by the relative ongoingly. And ultimately, for me, what captures that paradoxical reality most is some sense of the mystery.
Yes.
And curious how that concept is for you, this mystery.
I love the concept of the mystery because, I mean, to me, that is again, it goes back to experience. It's the ultimate joke of all this, is that we ask the question, what am I really, which is one of the sort of fundamental questions of a direct approach. What am I really? And then we find out, oh, I don't exist. There isn't anybody fundamentally there, and yet, okay, so I've asked the question to find out who I am, and I found out that who I am is a mystery. And maybe then you realize, okay, I am the mystery. Great. Now what does the mystery know about itself? Absolutely nothing. It's totally mysterious. So sort of a funny way, you end up where you started. It's just in a deeper place, right? You start out not knowing who you are, and you end up not knowing who you are.
And if we could say anything about the difference between the two, is that there's absolutely no problem with that mystery being the case.
Right. Yeah. Because the mystery isn't a mystery because of lack of insight or lack of understanding. It's because it is a mystery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No conflict, no problem.
Yeah.
Just the case.
Yes. Yeah. That's kind of what I mean when I say pure potential. It would be mystery. Because in that place, none of that potential has come into form yet. And without that, without it coming into form, there's nothing to know. Yeah.
You are listening to www.integralnaked.org.